Why do they act this way? And it's all about adolescence, and a broader understanding of what you're seeing. What I just thought it was great. It was a perfect, um, you know, kickoff to talk about this. My primary objective is to teach you the learning that we're going to go through. But my secondary objective, and maybe as important as the first, is to make you comfortable realizing the things that you see about adolescence. And when I say adolescence, I'm starting with age 9, where the tween years start. We're going to talk about a lot of the research later, where the tween years start from 9 and 10 years old, and teens starting like at 13 to 20 to 18 to 20. But what we're going to be talking about is thinking about that there's logic behind what they do. That's what I really would love for you to walk away from this talk more than anything else, that there is logic to what you're seeing. So these are some of the things that people ask when they refer to adolescence. I'm going to open the chat in a couple of minutes and you can write your own. But I'm just going to throw out a few things that's research shows to be the case, that parents find this very perplexing. I'm actually going to explain to you why that is soon, but why are they so contradictory in nature? They volunteer for this. I wrote an example. They volunteer in the summertime to work with developmentally disabled kids, or they do other things. They get in chesed projects, and they're just great kids. But all of a sudden, they seem so selfish. So it's the contradiction that parents very often deal with. And here's another example. This is a great book, by the way. It's quite old, but it's probably as relevant today as it was then. It's called Get Out of My, if you can't see it, Get Out of My Life, but first could you drive me and Cheryl to the mall? Okay, which we know very often, among the things that drive parents nuts is that we keep getting conflicting messages from them. We'll explore later. Maybe we're giving them conflicting messages also, but at least what we see is we see this constant pushing away. Like, I'm with my friends now. Yeah, don't, like, give me some space. I'm my own person right now. Yeah, but could you take me to the mall, please? And so again, that's just another feature of adolescence. This is a true note that a mother sent to me a couple of years ago. She was volunteering. Her child just entered middle school. That's just the beginning of the tween years. And she volunteered to serve lunch in school. Her daughter gave her this note that morning, left it on the table with clear instructions to her. Rules for lunch: no kissing, no blowing a kiss, no talking to me. You're just saying hi. How many? I see one of us, I'm not going to say names. I see one of you smiling already, right? So this is what it's like. We get this tug and push. Once in Yiddish, they say, Ata malach, ata galach. One moment they're an angel, the next moment, the galach is like a priest, that they jump back and forth between these extremes. And in the aggregate, it really makes us nuts, because possibly we can deal with them pushing away, we can deal with them pulling, but what's with both? And here's another feature of adolescence. Okay, my daughter and I were always close. We were always very close to each other, and very often we hear this from parents, that they say that they're just frustrated that we had such a fantastic relationship. I just thought that it's going to be like this forever, and now bang, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, she just, So here it is. My daughter and I were always very close. Now she's generally distant, randomly gets affectionate, and then it's back to hands off again. It drives me crazy. Okay, so another feature of adolescence, that they go back and forth between wanting our love, and usually it's extremely random that this happens. But, well, which one is it? Okay, so these are just a couple of examples. And let's use the chat, please. Go ahead. Can you give me your own examples, please? Go ahead. Please don't be shy. I told you can take your names off if you don't want to be seen, but there's no reason you should, but you feel free to. Tell me anything that fits in adolescent behavior. Why do they do? Go ahead. Fill it in, please. Why do they? Anybody? Last message I got was all good. I know that was 9:05. Anybody want to share something? If not, I'll just go ahead. Um, hormones, right? The hormones are raging, right? So that would be a reason for that, that the raging hormones make them different. Babysit kids. That's great, great, great. Babysit, there you go. That's why we take them. Babysit kids all the time, and then with their own siblings, they can't be bothered. Maybe you should pay them. I'm not just kidding. Right. So they do, but this altruism where they seem to always be helpful and not helpful to you. Came home in a great mood, asked the wrong question, and bang, they're in the worst mood. Why are they secretive? Good. Okay, great. Go ahead. Anybody else? Act mature 1 minute and throw a fit the next. Build paper sukkah won't touch ours. I'm not, by the way, you realize I'm not laughing, of course. I'm I'm just saying that these are also spot on with build neighbor sukkah. Act mature 1 minute, throw a fit the next, right? So why does this happen? And most importantly, buy them something amazing and have incredible conversation. Next day you say, you hate me. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh. It's just very good. It's a good description of all of you are giving like really accurate descriptions of the behaviors that we see and that we try to figure out. And my goal tonight is to show you why some of these happen and to explain the overall adolescent behavior. I responded right. Is it the next day is pretty good. Okay, so let's get back and let's go ahead. So here's what I propose, that you're all expressing honestly, and of course I very deeply appreciate it. You're expressing your behavior, the behaviors you see that frustrate you, and we don't understand them, right? So I propose that we make our poorest parenting choices when we're overwhelmed or unprepared. That means that if we understand something, it makes sense to us, and we're able to deal with it more rationally. If we don't understand it, we're more likely to be overwhelmed. And not understanding adolescence, which is so incredibly complicated, is like bringing a knife to a gunfight. You feel outmatched, that you just and you don't know what to do because it doesn't make sense. Um, that's why we're starting. So I'm writing here again. I propose, this is my own text. What's research based? I always quote. So I propose that it's quite logical and that there's an answer key. I've been, just by way of introduction, my name is Yaakov Horowitz. I just got in the envelope. I just got an envelope to prepare for Medicare this summer. So I'm 64 years old. I had the great chus of spending 42 years in Chinuch. We lived in Monsey most of our life. I was an 8th grade Rebbe. I volunteered many years for a remedial class. I was a school principal at Yeshiva Dachinom for 22 years. I ran programs for teens at risk, and I'm very involved in child abuse prevention. So I hope that all of those different perspectives will be helpful to share as we share ideas and thoughts. One of the things that I always told myself is that there's an answer key to everything, and there has to be a reason. From the beginning, I was just determined to find out what it is and to try to be inquisitive and try to figure out things rather than just responding. And that understanding leads to more empowerment. That there is direct research. I'll show you a reference later, but there is direct research that parents. Here we go. Here's some of the. Here's the. I always quote citations on bottom in case you're interested and would like to look it up. So there is clear research that greater understanding, even though it's also logical, that it leads to self-confidence and better parenting, improved relationships, your effectiveness as a parent, your family dynamics. So all of these are directly impacted by your parental self-confidence, which I propose comes from understanding things. I also propose that the corollary of that is that not understanding gets you frustrated. And we tend to we're much more likely to lash out. Here's an analogy that, it works as I think about it. I hope it's helpful to you too. Simple analogy. If any one of us did this, if we went into the shower, if we went into a shower, we were washing our hands at the sink, in the kitchen, or in the bathroom washing up, and you touch an appliance, a blow dryer, a shaver, whatever, you touch something, and you get an electric shock. We have pain, but we know exactly where that pain came from. Our first reaction is, should have whacked my hands. So there's a level of pain. There's no confusion, only pain. Now imagine that you invited someone from a third world country in, never saw electricity in his or her life, and the exact same thing happened to them. Exact same thing that happened to you. You washed your hands in the sink, you touched an appliance, and you got buzzed. That person got it. They have pain, but they also have confusion because they don't know why it happened. And that leads them to much more tension. That's what I propose. That, in other words, going through adolescence while not knowing things, it's not only that it's painful and difficult and frustrating, but it's also disempowering. You feel that you don't have the tools. And again, that's my goal, to get you through this and show you the logical connection by explaining adolescence. Here was the first example that we got. Why are they so contradictory in nature? Okay, and in fact, some of the things that you guys wrote about them blowing hot and cold and different things, there's actually this, when I saw it many years ago, it was just, the research was stunning. It was so striking. So there was a Soviet psychologist named Lev Vygotsky, and Dr. Vygotsky's theory was, he said that a feature of adolescence is that they explore different things. Why? Because they don't know where their life is going now. So they try out being altruistic, working in a summer camp, and having nice things. So he says that it's a crucial step of human development. In fact, they have to do this because they analyze previous experiences and character traits and decide whether they want to continue what they want to do when they're an adult. One story that comes to mind that was really fascinating is a father called me, complaining that his son, who was in his mid-teens, 16, 17, loved to learn and was constantly talking about spending his life in Kolo, meaning, after post-marriage, he wanted to devote himself to religious studies, which generally is a more altruistic lifestyle and involves a lot of self-sacrifice. At the same time, this kid knows every single fancy watch there is. He dragged his father to Manhattan to go to a car show, just to look at the coolest, nicest new cars. And it was a big disruption for the father. He was a fantastic father. He went and did it. Anyway, he called me up. That we're friendly. We became friendly. He was talking about his teenager and stuff. And he said, he's blessed with a great kid. He has no, but he says we were driving home. His kid took him to a Tesla dealer because he wanted to test drive the Tesla, and as his father should test drive, the one with the doors open up like wings, where the doors go vertically up, like it's serious money. And my friend wanted to ask his son on the way back. He said, I was biting my tongue the whole way. I wanted to ask him, hey, buddy, how's this going to work on a coal salary? Right? He said it was on the tip of my tongue to tell him that. I kept my mouth shut. Do I get extra credit? I say absolutely. And then he said, it makes no sense. It just drives me nuts. He says, I understand Kolo. I understand devoting yourself. I understand people who are into luxury and living a elevated lifestyle. But I don't. What's with the two of them together? So I sent him this theory, Vygotsky's theory, and he said, it makes perfect sense. And he called me a few weeks later to tell me his son didn't stop. He's doing exactly what he did before. But he's so much more confident that this is a normal thing for kids to do. Think of diets. Think of how we go through, you have a friend, or maybe you yourself are cycling through different, I got Atkins, this is this, fasting from time to time. I do, and many of these diets are the opposite of each other. But if you see somebody doing it, you say, well, make up your mind, what are you doing? But it makes perfect sense, because we want to find a diet that works for us. So it's not a conflict. You can read here. If you're interested in looking up, you can look up these names on bottom who explored this idea. But the basic idea is that it's a feature of adolescence. It's a normal feature of adolescence. In fact, if they don't go through this, they come to adulthood lacking a lot of traits that they need for life. Here's another one, okay? We discussed this. Random, right? A few of you wrote that. Let me look through. You love me and you hate me the next day. Buy something amazing, incredible conversation. Then they say, that I'm reading what you guys wrote. Come home in a good mood. I say, what? Now, it's back to hands off again. Look at this very interesting research. This is called, depending on, it's used by clinical terms, it's called refueling, refueling, recharging. The big idea is, I'm using my cursor to show that the children as adolescents, they have to do healthy separation. That means they have to separate from us, but they need to be anchored from time to time, like a battery that gets depleted, that they can't raise themselves. They want to be self-sufficient, and they want to think that they can do whatever they want, but they're not. They're kids, right? Look at the slide we had at the beginning. Get out of my life, but drive me to the mall. So the kids tell you to get out of their life, but they have to get to the mall somehow. So what happens is, and I encourage you, this is why I mentioned it, I sent it out in the email, but if you didn't pick it up, if you have a life and didn't read all of it, what we do, and the reason I set the classes up this way is that Monday night we have for 8 weeks we have a different topic every night. Wednesday night is an open Q&A that's not limited to this, but what I really would love you to do is go into your home and see if you see what Vygotsky talks about. Your home is your laboratory. So look around and see if you notice certain things like this. How did you respond to it? How should you respond to it? So I have, that's like tech support. 2 days later, I did it for all 8 weeks. In fact, the first group asked me afterwards, I got 4 or 5 emails from the cohort saying that they're going to miss this time together. So I did the first Wednesday of every month will be for alumni of the program. So, because we get to talk a common language, and I was very honored that they felt that way. It's my real pleasure to do it. So here's what it looks like. You're sitting on the couch. It's Friday night, talking specifically to moms, but dads, there's different applications of this. But let's talk, you're sitting on the couch. You were asking your daughter all day long to help you with the groceries, to help you with the Shabbos preparation. And she's off with her friends, she's texting, she's whatever she's doing, she's being a teenager. Then all of a sudden you light candles, it's quiet, and then she comes up, oh, I love you so much, Mom, and wants to snuggle up with you. And at that point, your natural reaction should be, where were you all day? And according to this theory, the refueling thing, it actually makes perfect sense, because they get depleted and they need to recharge off us, but it's not according to our rhythm. It's only according to theirs. That's the frustrating part. You don't get to recharge your relationship with them and hug them whenever you want. You could, but sometimes they'll push off. But the research clearly shows that when they go to us for affection and to connect, to recharge, refuel, it's very important that we give it to them, and we can talk to them about what we were upset about later. And it's okay. I don't believe to just let kids do what they want. Quite to the contrary, but wisely and at the right time. Another way to think about this refueling quickly is think of a 2-3-year-old in a playground. They run off, they run around and play with their friends, and then all of a sudden they run back to you, give you a hug, and you hug them back, and then they're off again. And you think logically. In other words, they're out by 2, 3, by the way, developmentally is a phase. It's called terrible twos because they start saying no because they start getting independent. That's the first stage of independence. At 12 months and 18 months, you're basically just moving them around. And then they start developing their own minds and going out and exploring. So that's just another feature of refueling. So we're going to do this throughout. I believe personally in theory and practice. I don't like telling people what to do. I like people, I'm glad to help guide parents, but I want you to have all the tools that you need. Therefore, these last 15 minutes, I was talking theory. Theory in and of itself isn't relevant. Many people get bored by it. And if you talk only practice, then you don't know what to do because you just heard what to do in this case. So this is my style. This is what you'll see throughout the series, that I take a practical example, like I take a practical example like this one, I'll throw out a scenario. You'll see me doing this. I'm just explaining it once, so you should to understand the logic behind it. I throw out a scenario, and through that scenario, I'll discuss the research about it. So between those two, you have the pragmatic, the practice part, while getting the theory as well. Okay, so let's go on to the next step. And this is really important to think about managing your kids and raising them properly. There's a Sturm und Drang theory. It was 1904. Again, it's written down here. You can look it up anytime or now. G. Stanley Hall came up with this theory of Sturm und Drang. It's storm and stress that was applied to other things in previous generations. But Sturm und Drang is German for storm and stress. He basically said that adolescence is inevitable. Sturm und Drang is that adolescence it's a storm, it's coming, you know it's coming, and there's just nothing you can do about it. He's like, I wrote this, not him. Tape up the windows and take in the patio furniture. It happens, they're going to be crazy for a couple of years, and just deal with it. But be prepared that it's coming. I remember seeing I mentioned this because it was so funny when I saw it. I saw someone compare it to teething. It's like a terrible phase, but it passes, and it passes, but there's nothing you can do about it. That's theory number one, that in approaching adolescence, that it's inevitable. I personally do not agree with this because I think there's a lot that you could do. So, and just so you think, it's these people run around and blame everything on technology. So some stuff has just been there since the beginning of time. This is one of Shakespeare's poems, The Winter Tale. It's written in that very old style of English. I would do no age between 16 and 3 and 20, meaning at parentheses, I wrote the vernacular. I wish that Shepard was saying that he wished the ages between 16 and 23, people would just sleep the whole time because the teenagers were making pranks with him and chasing away the sheep. But Margaret Mead, this was again the first decade of the 1900s. Margaret Mead went to American Samoa. It was a really fascinating theory she had of checking this out. Well, is it true that she was an anthropologist, she studied people, so she wanted to know about it. So she said, let's see, is it really true? Is there adolescent stress everywhere? She went to American Samoa, like people lived 2,000 years ago, and she found, lo and behold, that there was very little adolescent trauma. And that should be good news for you. I think it's very good news. That means that under certain circumstances, there's less drama. The reason that the reason you can theorize, but it seems pretty evident that if you look at American Samoa, they didn't have this in-between phase of school and college and kollel and beis medrash and going off to Israel. Virtually everyone worked alongside their parents as soon as they were strong enough to. So it would make sense that here's the rub. If we can get the children into more adult-like behavior earlier on, by giving them more responsibilities and more privileges, which brings up a whole host of challenges that we'll talk about later. But I wrote here in parentheses, maybe your grandmother was right. But I use great grandmothers, great grandparents, or great. When they talked about how in Europe they didn't have any, I'm not convinced that it was like that. But when they say that in Europe nobody was so disrespectful, not so sure it's true, but that would be a theory to say that it's right. And why is it stressful? Because adolescence is transition. And every type of transition is stressful. At any type of transition brings stress into our lives. And just like you would be if you were here on this line, waiting to check into a weekend bar mitzvah or waiting to go through security in an airport. I mean, you like your house, you love vacation. In between is not a good time. If I wanted a favor from you, talking to you on the phone then would not be a good idea right then. And the teens have the ultimate transition. If you have a few minutes, you can have a look at this. Is an imaginary letter from a teenager to her parents that I wrote in the Jewish press 20 years ago. So I was writing a Q&A column. I got a lot of questions on adolescence. So I made up this imaginary letter, this girl telling her parents, imagine how would you feel if you had to relocate and you didn't know where we're going to live and if you're going to have friends and if you're going to have work and what that's going to be like. Just, well, welcome to my life. I don't know anything. In this case, if you're moving, you know where you're moving to. I don't even know I'm going to get into high school, which one I'm going to marry, how, all these questions that they have. And naturally, every one of them brings a level of stress. So adolescence, think of it as a journey that children go from your safe home, hopefully, your safe, comfortable place. And that's why later we'll talk about why it's so important, regardless of the circumstances. And some are just challenging to try to make it as safe and comfortable as possible. But they go through this process that starts at 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and goes through till they're adults, till they're 20, 21. And during that stage, they start to disengage. So 21 is okay, and 10 is fine. It's in between. The rules become blurred. Who's in charge? Their bodies are changing. Their minds are changing. Everything's changing. And again, my hope is, as you read this, I'm not going to read all of this. I just left it for you to review at your leisure. But you have biological changes, you have intellectual changes, meaning how they think, how their brains operate, the whole social emotional piece. In addition, again, you got 3 separate phases. The research shows, by the way, that 18 to 21 has the least stress. In most healthy situations, the least stress is them because it's basically over. Like they have the keys to the car, figuratively and literally. So that's the middle phase. But these are all different domains of things that are changing. The early adolescence growth spurts, they look for privacy. Puberty is a huge issue with kids. If you had a Q&A, I'll be glad to discuss it with you. Middle adolescence, this frontal lobes thing on the frontal lobe on the bottom, I'm going to talk about in detail soon. That's not fully developed until their 20s. We're basically going to end with a discussion about that. And this is late adolescence and the features of this. So again, the big idea is I'm introducing you to, we started with these questions of why kids act this way. I propose to you that there's an answer key for all of it. And that hopefully even these two can help you. Again, I encourage you to go out and see if you notice it and see if as time goes on, you start responding, your response is different once you have the knowledge. And to be empowered to look, if they're not, even during, when it's not going on, then is also a time, to look around. And so then we went from there to dealing with those scenarios, explaining adolescence. Adolescence is this journey, and the journey in and of itself makes them tense and frustrated. That's why they pick their friends over parents, like 99 times out of 100. That's when peer pressure starts getting most intense, because whatever, we'll talk about that later, but that's another feature of it. And this last thing I want to talk about, we discussed the biological changes and the three phases of adolescence. Again, I encourage you to look it up and have a quick peek at it if you're interested. If not, what I told you is fine for now. We're going to move on to other topics next week. So this, we just mentioned sort of as not an aside, but excuse me, right here in middle adolescence, in the last bullet, we discussed here the frontal lobes and how a frontal lobe is basically the brakes on our brains, the governor, so to speak, to be able to help us make more mature decisions. It's not developed until they are late teens, usually lower 20s. So this is a description of what the frontal lobes are, but let's really talk about how this affects the children and therefore what challenges we have to try to raise them. So here's a story about a tragic story about a fellow named Phineas Gage, and everything is sourced here, so feel free to look it up. So he was a foreman on the railroad, very responsible, very well liked. You can read I referenced in the next couple of slides some quotes from it. And this is, drilling. They made the railroads in the 1800s when he was a young man, and they had to do a lot of blasting. So he very sadly was in a horrible accident. That's a picture of him. He lost an eye, and he lost that's in his hand. That's called a tamping iron. And that was meant to, what they would do is they'd put explosives in a hole and tamp it down and then blow it. And it blew early, Nebuch, went right through his head. And it destroyed this. On the left side is Harlow, by the way, was the person who wrote up the story. And this blue thing is called a frontal lobe. And until then, that was the reason the story is famous is because it was a huge change in the way doctors, scientists understood the mind. We initially thought that the mind is just this big thing, not that there are specific areas. So each one of these we know now are very different from each other. This frontal lobe is what makes people adult-like. It makes you make more responsible decisions. So again, it's really sad, but Harlow this guy who wrote about Gage, he was hardworking, responsible, a great favorite, most efficient and capable foreman. And then after the accident, they couldn't give him his place again. He had to leave work. What happened? He became a teenager because his frontal lobe that gets fully developed when people are in their 20s, got destroyed by him when he was in his 30s. But look at what it says. He's fitful, irreverent means disrespectful. He has gross profanity. He was using filthy curse words. No respect for others. Sounds familiar, guys? Impatient or restrained, couldn't control his desires. But look at this one, a child in intellectual capacity and the animal passions of a strong man. So he was fully developed as a person, but Nebuchadnezzar's mind, which was previously well-balanced, shrewd, now he was no longer Gage. So we have an example, a real live example of what happens in reverse, that he went from a responsible, capable adult. After this terrible accident, he functioned as a child because his frontal lobe wasn't developed. So there is a scientific challenge to adolescents also, and that is that they're not developed. And this is my final thought for the night. And then I'll be delighted to take your questions. So our Chazal, we find in Chazal, words of our sages, it says that from 13 to 20, People are responsible b'dinei adam, but not b'dinei shemayim. Now, let me know if you never heard of this, or none of your rabbis and teach moras in school ever told this to you. Send the chat. I'll look at the chat for a quick second. I once asked anybody, did anybody hear of this? Did anybody not hear of this? Did anybody hear of this? So here's something interesting. I think they don't want to tell you this in school, but if a young man or woman who's who is 13 to 20, if you key a car, if you break a window, if you destroy something, you chase away somebody's sheep, like in the Shakespeare play, and they get lost, they have to pay. They're fully responsible. But if they don't keep Shabbos, that's why I think they don't tell them that at school. But if they don't keep Shabbos, which is between Hashem, or they don't daven, or whatever, they do things that are only between them and God, they're not chayev, they're patur until they're 20. Isn't that fascinating? Exactly the years of adolescence. Exactly the years of adolescence. It's almost as if Hashem says, I get it. I made these kids like this. I made them like this. This is what they do. They're irresponsible. So they're big and strong. I have this transitional phase that I created as part of Teva, as part of nature. So I can't let them just wild around. They'll destroy the world. They're big and strong. So I'll hold them responsible if they destroy other people's property. In the times of the Talmud, they would actually make them work. They would assign them a job. They would have to work in the wages, or part of the wages went to pay the damage. So, but Hashem says, I get it. They're teenagers. I just thought it was such a fascinating insight into our own understanding of adolescence, and the fact that Hashem, this was built into halacha, it was built into Jewish law as a recognition of the fact that the frontal lobes aren't developed. I'll be delighted to take any questions. You're all muted. I'm going to allow you to unmute yourselves. So please allow participants to unmute themselves. Yes. Okay, you can all unmute yourselves, or you can send in a question by chat. But please feel free. Feel free to ask whatever's on your mind. My 13-year-old was school. Oh, get out of here! Really? Who said that? Just who's that? Oh, two people never heard of it, and one of the 13-year-old actually told it to you.
Yesterday, one of my kids, I have 4 teenagers, so one of my 13-year-olds hadn't woken up and davened so timely. And the other 13-year-old, who is the wake up and daven timely one, schooled me on that he's not chayev, between him and Hashem. He is if there's a property damage. So he wanted me to know that it was okay if he put on tefillin at 12:45 in the morning.
That's great. That's great. I'm surprised. I'm telling you, so far I got 2 no's and 1 yes. I did tell to my students because it was part of what part of the learning. I saw you raise the hand, Mrs. Usman. What did you want to say something?
No, I was just saying hi to Tova. We knew each other way back when. Sorry.
I know. No problem. It's very nice. Being sociable is great. So you got it. Great. How does it apply to kids who wake up? So how do you handle it? Great question. So that's what these Q&As are for. So you handle it with delicacy. First of all, patur doesn't mean that it's okay. It means they don't get punished. So that's what I told my students. I didn't just give them the good part. It means when we say patur, it doesn't mean they're patur from punishment. It doesn't mean they're not obligated to put on tefillin or obligated to daven, but the things that are negative commandments, that Allah says, and they would get punished for either in Bezdin or an understanding of Shemayim. It's like an in-between phase. It's like the equivalent of a teacher saying that you're not responsible for. That's what I used to tell my students. I always thought of a practical example from their lives. So I used to tell them, it's like when you learn something in school, your science teacher says, I'm going to teach it to you, but you're not responsible for this till next year. So I'd like for you to learn it, but you're not responsible. So in other words, this is the chinuch time. This is the time when they're supposed to learn right from wrong and learn what they should be doing. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't get up for davening or that 12:45 is okay. I mean, that's up to you guys. Um, but I'm saying it's not interpreted that they have no rules. Some of the rules aren't enforced. That's what it means. So it is. So your son is partially correct. That would be my response as a parent. That's how you respond. You should be davening, and and that we should be tolerant. My philosophy. That's why I'm so opposed to these bans. To banning things. Arbitrarily across the board, because I think adolescence is a time when children should make mistakes while the parents are home, while they're in the parents' home, so you can guide them through it. And that's why we're going to talk. One of the talks that we have later on, it's perhaps the most important one. It's called "Tell Me Anything," and it's all about creating the culture where your kids can talk to you, because if they can't talk to you about mistakes they make, or about what's really going on in their lives. I start off that module, that workshop, with a picture of an iceberg, and I say, 10% on top. That's what you see if your kids aren't confiding in you, and you'll sleep better at night. But you're not going to know what in the world is going on. So that's that's the big idea. We have time to walk them through stuff. So that's our job, to try to help them figure it out. That's my understanding. Let me just, so practically, how do you handle it, Chaya? I hope I answered your question. You talk to them about it and say you should be davening. I think I mentioned in one of the other talks that it's a little difficult I grew up in Bell Harbor, Queens. There was a 7 minyan and an 8 o'clock minyan, and that was it. Like, nobody rolled out of bed 10 o'clock and daven shachas. So my boys, we have 2 boys and 3 girls, and 2 boys were older. When they started this 9:30 business, Bein Hazmanim, when they were off for school, it drove me nuts. And I spoke to them about it a few times, and that's why it's so important to listen to the kids. Finally, one of my 2 boys told me, he says, "Ta, take us to shul. Everybody davens there. My rabbeim daven then." The kids told it to me. My boy said, "My Rebbe davens at the 9:45 minyan." Like, what are you talking about? And I used political capital for something that he just couldn't relate to, because he heard what I said theoretically. Yeah, there may have been a time, when the seltzer guy came and delivered seltzer bottles on your backyard, or whatever your grandmother's talked about. But like, I just dated myself and made myself irrelevant because I told him something that in his own eyes he thought wasn't true. So it's challenging. It's challenging, but you should have discussions with them. It's hard to me. Okay, it's hard for me with my 17-year-old when she doesn't watch Negavasa or daven on weekends bench. I don't want to be bad cop. So you're reminded from time to time, Ariella, that it's something that you do from time to time. You talk about it. Rab Shmuel Kamenetsky, so he was my posek for 20 ever for Shalema. He was my posek when I started Project S 1997. He said that if children don't daven, the parents, if they're not inclined to daven, the parents should concentrate first on berachas hanen and on brachas that they say for enjoying something like food or benching. Let's say that he would say stress benching before, let's say, davening, regular davening, because that's something relatable, that they took food. Hashem gave them food, and thank Hashem for it. So, to try to be flexible and talk about it. It's going to be an issue. Adults have the same issues, so it's something you talk about maybe later, during Q&A, or maybe a little later, or maybe Wednesday, if you'd like to bring it up. I'll share with you some fascinating, out-of-the-box, very creative things I've heard from educators over the years for ways they approach tefillah in their schools. And if you want, like some heads of school really get it and they know where the kids are up to and they understand that davening is a big challenge and some don't. Some expect them to all do it.
What about Neglavasser specifically? Like she said, Neglavasser and davening. Like I know that like there are people that are supremely like I know like I have family members that are like supremely makbid about Neglavasser. Like if my kids are in their house and touch things or their food without having washed Neglavasser, like I know it's like a big deal for them, and I don't know how much to impose on my kids versus like, like their standards.
Right. So if you're talking about your own house, it's okay to tell them to be respectful, that it's very important to them. If you're asking me that if you should take up, what was it, Sabracha? Hope it's okay if I call you by your first names. Is that all right?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Bracha. Was your question, should you be so
No,
or
like I mean like if I know that I'm gonna go to my father's house and it's supremely important to him that
right?
like people aren't touching his things with,
I,
like do I have to put that on my kids?
I think
Like
you should. I think you should tell them that it's important that out of respect, when we're in someone's house, that then we should respect the way they feel. Yeah, even if we don't. In other words, you say, look, I don't insist that you do it this way, and it would seem, from it's based on Kabbalah, it's somewhat Shulchan Aruch related, but whatever, it's important to them. If some people, you say, look, if some people are sensitive to loud noises, or not, or they don't like other things. So, like, I don't mind if somebody's smoking, but if somebody,
so
I
make
go
it a respect thing versus like a Yiddish thing.
religion, yeah, a bechlal, yeah, absolutely. And if you're ever arguing with your child about something else, like try not to bring religion into that. It's not a good practice. Because if you say it's a respectful thing to do because it's important to them. I don't feel that way. And for me, it's fine if you wash in the sink. But, my Yazidi likes it. That's the way he runs his house. And out of respect, it's only right that, I think
Thanks.
I'm sorry, does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a fair way. Just talk about it in the context of we have respect for others, and it's a good way. It's a good value to teach kids. Anybody have a question? I got one from Yair and Jada. Should we increase responsibility and privilege in order to decrease the transition like this month? Absolutely, yes. That's you too. Hi guys. Um, yes, I absolutely believe that if you make them responsible, meaning giving them their own money. Now, every one of these brings a challenge, but they can spend the money on whatever they want. There's no, whatever you move in one spot, it's like the whack-a-mole. You get stuff. If you do certain things, you get other challenges. But in the aggregate, I think it's a very good idea. I did it with their own children. I used to I never forced the kids, but our boys, they had the whole time off before Pesach. I politely insisted that they get a job and I matched them dollar for dollar. One of them went and was a mashgiach in a kasher hotels and two hotel kitchens. And he got really nice money. I matched him dollar for dollar, to incentivize him. And whatever he saved for a year, I matched again. So it was just a way of saying that I'm not just telling you to do it. I'm putting my money where my mouth is and I'm supporting it. So I think by giving them responsibilities, we're often concerned about it as parents. Well, if Nikki's working there and he's got $500 in his pocket, then he can tell me, you don't like it, too bad. So you have a discussion about that too. That there'll be a time in your life when you'll have full autonomy, but not now. I mean, the reason that I included that part about the Samoans is because it's an absolute governing principle of mine to try to diminish that adolescent phase. And I'll say something bold. You'll find that I'll do that from time to time. When parents financially support children, they're extending the adolescence to some degree. Think about that one. Okay, and then why? What do I mean by that? I'm not saying parents shouldn't support kids, but married children. But then you get into the whole issue. I cannot begin to tell you how many times, thousands, over the years, where you get into this thing like my mother-in-law, my parents. I love them. They're so nice. They gave me money for a carriage, and they want me to get that carriage. And I say, no, it's not. Or a parent tells that. Or parents tell their married children, all right, you have 3 kids, time out. And the kids, wow, we're married. Say, hey, I'm supporting you. I'm not making a value judgment. I'm saying that this adolescent drama that comes from not having clear boundaries of who's doing what, that leads to all sorts of confusion. And I'm saying it leads to drama after marriage. I'm not saying if the parents are right or the kids are right in any of these scenarios, but it brings it up. Therefore, hence, Yair Treda, how do you pronounce it? Deidre? Deidre, got it? Okay, so Yair and Deidre, that was a long answer to a short question about the Samoans. I absolutely encourage you to move your children along to get Samoan-like, meaning, not that they should, milk the cows, but that they should transition faster. That's my thing, and that was Margaret Mead's. Yes, please, PK, go, please. You're muted. You're muted. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, sorry. Could you give examples for that? Let's say for 13-year-olds.
Like what? Examples of?
Well, like what you just said about giving them more freedom, responsibilities.
So whether it's financial, one second, it could be that you start giving them some money, some pocket money, a little bit more, open an account with them. You can start giving them a little more privileges in other areas, where instead of let's say your children are your 13-year-old, is it 13-year-old's your oldest?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when, right, it's normal. That's when you really feel it for the first time. So, by the time your second one turns 13, it'll be easier, probably, but possibly. But but if you, in other words, let's say you have, give me a source of stress at home that my son wants to go to friends every Shabbos afternoon. They want to go to the pizza shop after Shabbos and stay until whatever. Tell me something that's a source of stress.
I don't know where to start, so
Okay. Give me a mild one. Start with a mild one.
Not wanting to wake up on time, not wanting to go to school.
Right. That's good.
Davening on time, like nothing.
Right.
And he just had a bar mitzvah.
So
He's also ADHD, so.
Well, so that's whoa. That's a big deal. So
Yeah.
that means that it's 5 times as hard for him to do any of those things as everybody else, right?
Yeah.
So that really complicates matters. I'm glad you brought it up. But what autonomy looks like there, for example, is that you tell him, you say, listen, sweetheart, I'll give you 1 day a week. You pick the day, I won't say a word to you. Let's say, for argument's sake, you say 1 day a week, I won't hassle you about davening, about minyan. Once a week, I'll let you just say Birchas HaShachar and Shmona Esrei, and that's it. And if you want to, whatever, I can't sit at the Shabbos table, okay, I get to pick a half hour when you sit there, and then you can go excuse yourself. In other words, have these adult-like negotiations, and you might come back to me and say, oh my God, Rabbi Horowitz, that's, by the way, that's the Wednesday part for, okay? Try it out and come back. That's what I meant. This is what I meant about being a lab. And we learn from each other's mistakes and journeys. That's what really makes the learning rich. That's what makes it, you remember it. But that's a way to give them autonomy. What you really said is, I have a rule that everybody has to daven when they get up. But you're 13 years old. And even though you could say that now you're responsible to daven minat Torah, but I understand you're getting older, so I'll give you 1 day off a week. Let's say. Now, what that happens is, he might come back and say after a very difficult week, can I have a second day? Then you horse trade. But now he has some autonomy. He has a thing in his pocket now. You gave him an invaluable card in his pocket that he can pull out once a week and get off something he doesn't want to do. So you've made him more adult-like because now he has some autonomy. It's called scaffolding. The term is used for other things, but they make these buildings, they put fencing around the building so nobody should fall off. You familiar with the term scaffold? They put on whatever they when they build buildings or bridges, they have like protective fencing for the workers so they don't fall off if they're on the 10th floor, putting a roof on. So the idea of scaffolding is to let your children explore a little bit, but with safety barriers around them. You let them, you give them some little pieces of autonomy at the beginning, and you say, it's okay if you say, look, sweetheart, you want more, you like this, you want more of this? Well, let's see how it goes. Let's see how responsible you are.
So basically, I gave him too much because I decided just to not say anything, and I thought that way he would feel more responsible.
Is how's that working out?
It's just no more fighting, but he's like,
What?
he does whatever the hell he wants. He goes to
Right.
school whenever he wants.
Right. So I would advise you to pull back a little bit on that and tell him, look, this isn't working because you're just doing it all the time. But I acknowledge, let's meet somewhere in the middle. Even if it's not 1 day. I don't know the details, but you shouldn't, I don't believe, I like to think that I'm progressive and forward thinking. I guess everybody does, but I don't believe in giving up the store to the kids at any time. So don't just say you can do, you don't have to daven if you don't want to. Tell me, work out something, and you'll say 1 day, he'll say 3 days. That's what the discussion is all about. So that I would say that you're empowering him perhaps even more than just letting him do what he wants. Basically, you're giving up. I'm the parent, sweetheart. I get to make some rules. Just judiciously do things that he's able to do, and you try to work around that. I mean, I don't want to discuss this online, but I don't know if he's medicated, that brings in some positive qualities, but
he is, but when he wakes up first thing, he's not.
exactly what I was going to say. He crashes at night probably when the medication wears off, right? So that brings a whole host of other challenges. But I don't think that you should just give up the store and say, yeah, do what you want. Because you say, look, I'm not really doing my job as a parent. I want you to succeed in life, and you're going to go to high school, and not everybody's going to do what mommy does. And you try to talk it through. That would be my advice. Try it out. See how it goes.
Yeah.
See that currency, that discussion, the give and take, that's what creates you think you'll be arguing more, but in some ways it could deepen your relationship, and it also allows you to make them more responsible adults on the other side. And you say, I'll take into consideration during times when you wake up and you're not medicated yet, during those 20, sometimes many kids, like those first 15, 20 minutes after they take medication like that, the brains are, getting schlepped around. So you can understand that time also. But it's just giving them more autonomy. All right? Does this mean we shouldn't hold it? Was that hold or no? We did that. Okay. ES, that's kind of. What if they don't go to, I'm reading what if they don't go to Shachas Ben Yeshiva ever? My 13-year-old won't go every day. My son goes to a school. School lets him go or doesn't let him go? Who wrote that? You want to share it, please? You want to? You're welcome to come on and discuss it. I just got a last name Ackerman. Did you? I'm reading your message. Would you like to come on? If you don't want to, that's fine. Message. The school doesn't enforce him going to Minion. I mean, they don't force the kids to go to Minion. Don't know. I'm not sure. I can't answer you directly. I think you should, even if he's not going to Minion, you should have some sort of program for him davening at home. Again, I'm just encouraging you not to stay. You're the parents. We're going to talk about it. I think that there's a unit in the next couple of weeks about negotiating with your kids. I'm really going to be spending specifically talking about how to do that effectively. But I don't think it's helpful to just give them a pass and let them do whatever they want. There might be circumstances where they cannot do, or they don't want to do, or they're going through other trauma in their life, and it's not practical to make a fuss over everything. So then that's when you start adjusting. I always say that adolescence in a nutshell is that you think they're 7, they think they're 19, you know. You think they're 8, they think they're 18. Everything else is mafarshim. Everything else is commentary. And that's about, you want to have, autonomy. They want to be free. And it's somewhere in the middle. That's why the research shows that there's much less drama when the kids are 18, 19 in the late stages of adolescence, because they're basically making their own decisions. It's the in-between part. And again, based on Margaret Mead's research and thinking of those terms, which I absolutely agree with, there are ways to compress that phase. It's the in-between phase. You compress the phase when you make them more responsible and give them autonomy. As I said, that brings up other things. We'll discuss that later. All right? Okay, folks. Have a beautiful couple of days. I'm back Wednesday, Mitzvah Hashem, 9:00. This is recorded. I'm going to be posting up. I'm going to be posting in that Dropbox link I sent you. I'm going to be posting the video. I'm going to do it unedited, so you'll have to skip through the first couple of minutes. If I get a better version, if my administrative director in Israel can fix it up, I'll put back a better version. But I hope you found this thought-provoking. That's the nicest compliment you can say is, Rabbi, you got me thinking. That's the best. Because if you think about stuff, and that's what I want you to do, go back, look, think, explore, and I'll be here to help you. Okay? Thanks so much, guys. Be well. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
My greatest pleasure. My greatest pleasure. Good night.
Thank you.
My greatest pleasure. I hope you got your thinking.
They'll let you know on Wednesday.
Let me know. That's called my tech support night. Okay, guys. Be well. Good night.